Residents of Zandspruit, northwest of Johannesburg, have vowed to intensify their demands for electricity and water. They threaten to boycott the upcoming local government elections in August unless their demands are met. Residents are also demanding that Johannesburg Mayor Pax Tau address them directly. Yesterday, residents refused to listen to an address by a representative from Tau's office. But Tau says he will not visit them despite their calls, insisting that he sent senior councillors to the area. Some local businesses claim they haven't had water for about a week. Police have warned motorists to avoid the area.
Rhodes University has suspended all academic activity at the institution until further notice. Rhodes has been brought to a standstill by the ongoing anti-rape protests. University authorities have obtained an interdict barring students from intimidating, assaulting or threatening anyone on campus. Students took to the streets demanding alleged rapists on campus be suspended pending investigations. The Eastern Cape University has set up a team to investigate the rape and sexual assault allegations. Well, the protest has sparked a national debate about rape culture at universities. Let's continue that conversation now with Rape Crisis Director Kathleen Day. She's in our Cape Town studios for us this morning. Kathleen, good morning and thanks for your time this morning. Like we've just said, teams being set up, task teams being set up to investigate and figure out how we deal with this. I mean, let's just get to it. Is that the answer? What will these teams actually achieve? What is the actual direction we need to be taking in solving this crisis?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on the show. The task team actually plays a very important role in that they can deal with the immediate situation. They can look at what needs to be done about the allegations that have been made and come up with a plan that deals with those immediate issues. But they can also look at some of the deeper complaints that are going on about policy at the university, about procedures, protocols and practices, and come up with a short, medium and long-term plan for that. So it doesn't need to be a task team that disbands immediately after dealing with the immediate crisis. And that, I feel, is what is really needed, is to look at what they can do about rape culture on the university campus in the long term.
Well, what are the policies? What are the things that can be done? What should form part of those plans to give students their first stop when something has happened, they've become a victim of a sexual crime? The first stop, what should be their first stop on campus?
Well, the policy needs to be very clear, first of all, in terms of the code of good conduct of the university. Both staff members and students need to know exactly how the rules can be broken and when the rules are being broken. That's the first part. And those policies need to be reviewed periodically. They can actually become out of date and not be properly adhered to. And that has to be constantly watched by the administration. And then if a student needs to complain, it would be like any employer or any academic institution. There would be a grievance or a complaints procedure, a formal procedure with formal processes in place to make sure that the university holds up those standards in its code of conduct and sanctions people who break that code of conduct. As any employer, they have a right, in fact a duty, to do that, whether it's a student that's at fault or a staff member, and to take appropriate action, which they would have that sanction in their policy, whether it's dismissal or suspension or whatever it might be.
Kathleen, we know that that is what should happen, but according to what some of the students are saying is that they're too afraid, whether it's somebody in management or whether it's somebody on the SRC who's been accused, they've been shot down, and even when they even go to report something like this or mention it to somebody in authority. So what is the answer here? Because let's admit, it's not just something that's happening on campus, it's the general culture we have, the general attitude towards rape and reporting rape in the country.
Exactly. It's very much like what's going on in the country. It's a sort of a microcosm of what's happening in South African society. And what we advocate for is specialized services, so that you have specialized police units, you have specialized health facilities, and you have specialized sexual offences courts. And we're watching very closely government's promises to roll out those sexual offences courts and maintain its specialized services. So a university needs to have specialized services in place in exactly the same way, obviously on a smaller scale. That could be expensive in terms of hiring and expertise, but where universities have an advantage is that they have a massive alumni body that they can draw on, of people that have trained at that university, who've gone out into the world, who have become experts, and who are often more than willing to give back to the institution. and there again to come up with procedures that are sensitive, because this is a crime that's incredibly difficult to report, and the barriers to reporting it are a serious problem, because you have all this damage being done to the university community and no way of addressing it because not being reported. That's a huge problem.
Kathleen, I mean, it does also come down to attitudes and perceptions of what happens when such things are reported. I mean, some of the students saying that they're asked about what were you wearing at the time, or had you been drinking before, or were you drunk? And just, you know, looking at getting answers for them and getting sort of people to change attitudes when whether it's police, whether it's their first stop, whether it's a nurse at a hospital. It's a matter of changing attitudes and making students feel safe enough to be able to go to, and that somebody will believe them when they actually make that first stop and make that first report.
Yes, changing attitudes is a very, very complex process. And there again, the university needs to look at institutional culture change. How do you bring that about? How do you promote the kind of attitudes that you want? And how do you prevent the kind of attitudes that you don't want? And the first step to that is making those clear, naming them, articulating them, saying what standard of behavior you expect of your community, and then championing people who are able to encourage the right kinds of attitudes. And obviously a lot of that is about education, it's about awareness raising, it's about letting people know what the laws say, it's about letting people challenge ideas that are very conservative and exposing people to new ideas and encouraging them to change their attitudes.
And organizations like yourself, like Rape Crisis and the others that we know of as Women and Men Against Violence Against Women and Children, are you asked to give input, or do you plan to have any say in these processes from now on campuses and other institutions?
We have been asked to give input, absolutely. I think the university is reaching out to its broader community now and hopefully establishing links that will go on into the future, where there can be a relationship of mutual benefit between, let's say, NGOs or other service providing organizations. So Rape Crisis has been asked to provide counseling services to our nearer universities, and also to give advice to task teams that are dealing with this issue in the medium and long term.
Thanks very much for your time, Kathleen Day, Director of Rape Crisis. She's in our Cape Town studio for us this morning.